Okay, thank you very much, David. So I'll start sharing screen now here if I can get this to work. David said I've been fascinated by languages since a kid, and lines of poetry used to come into my brain when I was a kid. But the first poem I ever really wrote down was from a workshop when I was in 6th grade. And I was given a picture of a field of grass, and this is what I came up with. The grass. The grass is swaying like a dancer doing a strange dance. It's swaying like a sailboat sail, flapping in the breeze, swaying as it pleases, swaying as if it could sail away. Sail away, grass, sail to the sea, sail till you get to the end of the world. I wish I could go there too. And I don't have any other poetry that I remembered and wrote down until later in high school, my senior year. A good friend of mine decided she liked my best friend better than me and told me. And after being in a funk for a couple of days, this poem came out. This is called The Island. Dancing clouds of electrons swirl mid wrinkles, columns, and realms, crashing like waves and washing away with sudden moments of calm. A light shines above, then is shrouded again by an ocean dyed green and confused. The tide speaks of dreams that were scribed in the sands, but now the beach is swept smooth. There once was an island that drifted away, or so it seemed to me. Yet there shone a reflection in a far-off land, and a mirror spanning over the sea. The image, it sparkled, shimmered, and swayed, like a dancer to a beat. Or perhaps it was more like a restless colt, expressing a desire to be free. Currents shifted and changed their course through familiar waters once more. But the island had changed. She was not quite the same, with a different shape to her shore, for the island had grown by a nurturing hand, as had gently been raised to a mount, and there was consoled by a whistling tune as she slowly built up new ground. When fingers reach for branches, they knew they are greeted by falling leaves. But the island must wait for the spring to return, though she still can feel a sea breeze. As storms pass through and lightning crackles, occasionally one meets with pain. But as time goes on, the thunder will fade, though a mystery, though a memory will always remain. Perhaps a mystery too. So after next year I went to college, in order to get out of writing a paper for my poetry class, I wrote some extra poems and got interested in experimenting with shapes and concrete poetry. So this is one that came out freshman year. This is Lens Fall. Bold glass curves away and lines melt together. Shadows flatten and overflow their edges. Glowing orbs send out sparks of fractured light. Colors blend as air and water mix, forming blur-garbled images whose atoms swirl in waves of business. If figures fold in on themselves till they almost disappear into darkness. And that was what came to me as a description of what happens when I take my glasses off, turning out the light before going to bed. Then my second 2 years in college, there was a courtyard with a tree in it that I'd pass on my way to my dorm every day or evening, and started speaking to me, and came up with a number of poems, some of which are developed like this one, and some of which are Not so well developed yet, hoping to work into a chapbook someday, but this is the first one that came to me, and it has a little bit of a trick to it. Tree forms spider web eye with swimming circles of silken thread inside it, overlooking branches dripping with tears of water, shadow, and gold, as specks of light dance below. And then one of the poems I wrote about this tree, I worked up into a calligraphic image for a Washington Calligraphers Guild exhibit a few years ago. So I thought I'd show this and read it. See if I can get this. Okay, that's not working, but let's read it this way. She's losing her hair, her golden brown curls, in the crisp morning air. They fall gingerly. This next one is from one of the first evenings I spent away from campus in college and the experiences I had waiting for a bus to get back home. This is called Evening of Echoes. I saw punks drive by in a silver Volvo as a guy struggled to put his eye back in. And the lady said she left coins in her room. Fran said she checked the drawers and everything, where she couldn't stay tonight. I want it now, he yelled at the nervous man. She had lots and lots and lots of money. The voices echoed from the statuary corners. There were no lights where they were going, but the banks just wouldn't take her checks. The shadows were moving, the flowers were firmly bolted shut, and tomorrow was May. Hawaiian rings hummed at a crossing around midnight, so she'd be getting a whole bunch more. And the broken bits of raw spaghetti fell slowly from my hand. And believe it or not, most of those things actually more or less happened if I took a little poetic license with them. So the summer after college, I actually needed to make up a couple courses, and one was a philosophy course that I found rather boring, so I wrote this poem in the middle of the classes, looking out the window. The tower out the window pane takes me far away from boring arguments on grief, which have not much to say. It rises from believing trees and archly soars aloft against the sky that's filled with gray, a hue that's heavy soft. It pierces through the leaden air, casting sharp relief on harsh philosophies which oft have strained my firm belief. Had fun playing with the end rhymes, mixing them up between the stanzas even. And the second course I took was more fun. I needed to make up an elective, so I got a chance to study the Georgian language at the University of Chicago. And one of our assignments there was to write a poem in Georgian. I found this recently in my notes and I had to retranslate it back into English. So I'll read it in Georgian first and then English. Brunduli Koshki. Jemi Koshki da Brundebia. Spasachit ki ich veneba. Rotza kutches shebuchve chlav. Ispertsashi aprindeba. Galiebis zuzunishua. Skel natel nisishi kargeba. Griel mtsane chanchkers kifgeda. Mtvariskan chamo is khmeba. And then in English, the tower from the previous poem theme seemed to come back to me here. It was returning tower. My tower has once more returned. Another side it has showed my eye. When I around the corner turned, it launched into the violet sky. Amid cicadas' buzzing call, I'm lost in a warm white mist at noon. but now see a cool green waterfall cascading down from the face of the moon. And then another thing I started in college, I've been doing more lately, is writing elegies for people who passed. This was for an elderly relative of mine who passed when I was a senior in college. And this came to me. Then it's been altered a little bit over the years, but this is for my double cousin twice removed. My father's father and father's mother shared a cousin in common, even though they weren't cousins. It's like if you introduced cousin on one side of your family to a cousin on the other side of the family, and then they fell in love and got married. So she lived nearby, so we used to visit her more frequently than my grandparents. This is called Flowers for Florence. You told me once of your Uncle Joe, that he was my father's father's father, and how he'd play the jaw harp low, then fill the room with joyous laughter, and how he died on a trolley car in Texas, home of the yellow rose, involved in a fender bender jar that left the others just slightly hurt, but he by then had a weakened heart, though always its warmth had overflowed. For Grandpa, his son, his family, and his loving wife of the clan Cassan, whose name brings me back to places where I'd sensed the apple blossoms at night. Their fruit would make with rosewater a sauce you'd blend with cream for a frozen delight. Quite like the beautiful delicate lace you gracefully taught me how to make, while somewhere kittens danced around mid violets scattered on the ground. And Grandma, like an anagram, made of letters like magic revealed, within their lilac-covered can, whenever we would come to call. She was a cousin of yours as well, but on your father's Hadley branch, thus weaving together our family tree. When you'd suggest Grandpa stop on his way through hills of blossoming buckeye trees, to fields we knew of purple vetch, to study the ancient biblical texts, receiving the first of his 2 degrees. She stole your cello playing beau, with whom you used to make such plans in league with all your cousins Cassan, the maiden name of your mothers both, with Lily of the Valley for their day, that comes each year in the month of May, parading around the yard to the tune of pot and pan and ladle and spoon. He took her to a far-off land where dahlias and poinsettias grow, to learn a language you'd never know, not off to fabled England's sand, the land of the roses white and red, or meath across the Irish Sea where heather spread over the lea, where cousins of first degree could wed. Just like his father, your Uncle Joe took his new bride to his native home by the banks of the languid river Perquimans. I wonder if there they grow persimmons, like those along the side of the yard of the family house on College Street, tended by Grandma's old maid aunts, which were for Dad a bittersweet treat. And there his bride was taken aback to see the dark-skinned nurse of his youth so warmly hug him at the gate, magnolias blooming along the route. You did forgive Grandma, but quietly cried the tears like cherry blossoms fall. You didn't wait long to follow the call, once hearing that Grandpa, your cousin, had died. But all the stories you told to me, keep every single one of you, and parts of my heritage you helped me find, oh so keenly alive in my mind. And still you're more pretty than all of the flowers, whose names you always knew. This next one, that is an elegy for a friend of mine who died when we were in high school. I came to realize he was my best friend in middle school, but one of the few people I kept in touch with when I moved to a different high school then. This is Victory, in loving memory of my friend Victor, 1964 to 82. You float upon subconscious streams that can make it hard to breathe, when sounds of jazz-inflected dreams start to swing on a time-warp breeze. So did the man whose prejudice ever let you take the wheel? You standing up by sitting down to express the way you feel. In front of the stand around midnight time, I'd be feeling the invisible drizzle, us blowing the tones of a restful rhyme and then making them gentlemen sizzle. And you'd be choosing the clearer value of seduction amid the tones, near where we'd weather a flying tantrum about a tempo wandering from home. And we'd be checking out the trap, having wriggled out of class in a room of silently sleeping sheaves, full of vibrant, glittering brass. You'd be asking how you figured, while we'd fake the sounds of seagulls, us squawking loudly with such vigor, spirits soaring like the eagles. And I'd be checking out the rhythm of the congan groove you pitching, while healing your sister hammer hickories, getting them ready for the kitchen. And I'd be catching the patchwork play for a greeting I'd solely witness, you laughing at them dancing eggs with a passionate yen for citrus. And you'd be winging that equine sphere that act more like a football by hanging eerily in the air, like the echo of a footfall. And now you're jamming on that train, fingers jumping with jive and skill. The notes of all them tunes you shared still be sliding through my skull. The echo there like yours did on stage, knuckles rhapsodizing with speed. Though as in rumor you submerge to the beat of a galloping steed. That resonates in my soul, brother. I never had any truer friend. And in the memories of another, you'll triumph in the end. So as I said, I've been writing a few more elegies. This is one for a friend, another friend from the same middle school who I can reconnected with on Facebook, and like a number of friends I've had lately, I reconnect with on Facebook, and then I find out through Facebook that they've passed on. So this is Laughter Lifting Through the Tears. In loving memory of Larry Lafferty, whose name can be translated as Victory Rich Hero. You taught me to nestle Hangul in their frame, that beautiful script for Korean routine. In spite of the lilt in your quite Irish name, your mother had come from that morning serene. You shared novel sounds that were easing your fears, a band of traditional Japanese strings, like echoes of victory filling my ears, infused with the power of metal-clad wings. My mind wanders through a familiar breeze with tales of rich heroes, both brave and so true, while now a few thousands of sakura trees are weeping their nebulous petals for you. But memories of how your sharp laughter unfurled still cut through the gloom of this everyday world. And the word victory, which is in his name, reminded me of the poem Victory, so that's why there's some echoes of that in there. And the song he introduced me to by this traditional Japanese metal band was called Thousand Sakura Trees. So I had to work that in. So this one is for my father. When he passed away a few years ago, I started writing an elegy and realized eventually, though, that it's not going to fit all into one poem, memories of my father. So this is one of the few that I've actually gotten relatively final form here. This is called Mementos. Concealed in the back of my uppermost drawer, there sits a chip-carved wooden box with painted panels of onion domes I got in Moscow and gave to my dad. Each year or so, since he has passed, I pulled it out and opened it up. Inside are a set of mementos he saved, some tie tacks and pins from places he'd been. His old Barlow knife, he used to show me how to carve a puzzle he had made in the shop he put together in the garage. Or once he made me a triptych of cards. And also a change purse, like ones he'd buy whenever his old one would finally wear out, with folds arranged in a circular form that holds a coin I brought back from Japan. and a pin he asked me to buy him to recall our family legend of Cherokee blood. At the last Scottish Games I took him to, like ones he took me to years before. And then recently I've realized, I haven't written hardly anything about my mother. So a couple of them have started to come out. She's still with us, but beginning to have memory issues, but she's doing okay at 88 years old. So this is a memory that came back to me of her at a workshop. This is called Strawberry Bavarian Pie. My mother taught me how to bake a pie crust and an oatmeal cake, and other things I love to make, like talismans of food that take me back to times with love she'd share while sitting in a kitchen chair. The wait to create these treasures rare, such comfort food with a subtle flair. Then when it was time, the crust we'd fill with strawberry Bavarian and let it chill. She'd whip the jello and cream until they almost set, and then with skill, she'd fold in berries that turned it bright pink. And down into the crust it'd sink, its flavors like the missing link of the joys of childhood I'd lost, I'd think. But really, the memories are always there, like fleeting glimpses of my mother's care. And then I have one more to share, and this one I'm going to go stop the share because I believe I haven't memorized, and go on camera here. This turned on. There we go. This is called My Partner's Hands, and thank you to her for being here. My partner's hands are quite small. We put the bases of our palms together. The tips of her fingers, which are oh so slender, barely come up to my second knuckle. They often remind me of that E.E. Cummings poem. The last line, it says, nobody, not even the rain, has such small hands. But they can move very fast when she's typing for work or playing her favorite text twist game. Her palms can get calloused and cracked at times from rubbing against the handles of the crutches she's needed to use since she learned how to walk. Whenever we go for a walk together, it's impossible to hold hands, but we try, allowing a few of our fingers to entwine for a while. Some people don't understand why we like to hold hands so often when we're sitting together. But the subtle warmth that comes through in her touch is the most magical thing I know. Thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity. And I'll put a link in the chat in case you want to check out my multilingual word arts, like my world word wave. Thought it was interesting that spoken world makes fun on the world and word, like a lot of my designs do. So you can get that on posters, prints, and pillows, and all kinds of things.